Um, so here we are, elections are over. What's the Halifax market going to be like? Andrew?
Everybody's favorite question right now.
I know.
For me, I think it's just going to kind of remain steady the way it's been. I don't see any significant drop-off coming necessarily. I don't foresee any significant growth coming. I think we're going to hover around like a 4 or 5% kind of average growth year over year.
So I disputed that in my last interview.
Okay. So what do you think?
2%.
2%.
I say in Nova Scotia 4, yes.
Okay.
In Halifax, 2%.
Yeah. And right now we're trending around 4-ish right now, year to date, but that might come back to reality a little bit in the second half of the year.
Yes, but in April there were 2 homes that sold over 2 million, one being 3 million. So that's just going to drag the price of everything else up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just don't see that big of an increase.
Yeah. I think when you look at it, there's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is like at a certain point, do you hit the wall of people can't afford it, right? Like this is something that is a problem in our market, I would say, as that average sale price continues to increase. But at the same time, if you look at like HRM, let's say there's 550,000 people. A typical year of sales in HRM, like HD region, is 5,500-ish, like was 4,200 back when the sales were down.
So I only look at single family homes, but it's been on average since 2016, 4,200.
Yeah. So my point is, I understand that like a lot of people feel that, you know, you're running and eventually you have to hit the wall, like something has to give, like the prices have to come down or the wages have to come up to support it. But at the same time, when you look at if there's only, you know, call it 4,500-ish sales a year, only such a small percentage of the population has to be able to afford it to continue like pushing the barrier of where that average sale price can go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had, so where do you think we're going to end up at the end of the year? Just where we are now?
I think we're going to be right at 600,000 average sale price in HD region at the end of this year.
So that's down.
That's up year over year.
So the average house price right now is 660,000 as of today.
I'm saying the whole year,
okay,
whole, like January 1 to December 31st, the average of those 12 months of sales will be 600,000. That's
what was it last year? Was it 570 last year?
It was about 574, 575, something along those lines, depending on if you include like mini homes and condos.
Yeah, no, just single family homes. That's all I look
so
at.
Single family home would be a little higher than that then. Yeah, because when I run it, I'm running mobiles, condos, and single family homes.
Okay, yeah, no, I take that out of the, but you know, we had 400 homes we had 400 homes sold in April.
Yeah.
Do you think it's gonna, so last year, like April, May, June were good.
Yeah.
And then it just died and picked up again. Do you see that momentum again?
Yeah, I think it's tough because there's been so much uncertainty in the market in general with, you know, economically, politically, everything going on, the tariffs, all that. And I think, you know, the market certainly doesn't thrive on instability. It thrives on stability. It thrives on consumer confidence. And I think as the dust starts to settle from some of these things, you know, maybe the consumer confidence kind of comes back a little bit. But I think in general, what we're seeing right now, April and then kind of into May and June, I think will be some of the busiest months of the year, more than likely, which is, you know, historically kind of the typical. Normal. Probably going to die down a little bit in the summer. People will be on vacation, the whole 9 yards, and then probably pick up again September, October for a couple busy months before kind of the winter, you know, the winter slowdown, if you will.
Yeah. What I am seeing this year is buyers are very trepidatious in the higher end market. And I believe, you know, those buyers are different. They have, you know, portfolios, you know, financial portfolios. And I think they're just waiting until, you know, what our friends down south do before they get into like a big investment like that here.
Yeah, I would agree. From my perspective, buyers are being like really picky right now. And
every price point.
At every price point. And I think that the thought process is, you know, there's a little bit more inventory now, but like a lot of that inventory is stale. It's stuff that was on last fall and didn't sell, and now it's back again. Like, it's weird because a lot of homes are selling in like a week or 10 days or less, or they're sitting for like 30, 60, 90 days. And I just feel like there's a lot of homes that are like stale inventory. And to me, I think they're stale because the sellers are saying, I will sell if I get X. And that price that they're waiting out for is a big number for that particular home. So in other words, if they have their home listed at $869,900, for example, if they listed at $799, it probably sells overnight for $820, $830. But because they're at $870 and they're saying I won't take a penny less than $855 or $860 or whatever that number is, they're sitting longer and longer and longer, and you're seeing the days on market kind of creep up as well, right?
Why has the mentality of the seller changed?
Because
this year it's harder this year. I've been finding. Yeah,
I would agree. I think the whole mindset surrounding real estate in Halifax has changed. When you look at 2020, 2021, 2022, and I think that like that was such an anomaly in our market, and because it was so hot then, I feel like that expectation is still there, even though the demand is not nearly the same as it was in early 2022 or pretty much any time in 2021. And I think like right now, if I list a home at $849,900, I really need to set that expectation with the seller to say like, look, this is probably not going to sell in a weekend. And it's not to say that it can't, because some micro markets are still allowing for that, right? Like there's a big difference in an $850,000 home in West Bedford than there is in West End Halifax as there is in Middle Sackville. Like those are three very different things. And I think that people get all out of whack with the expectations of price growth, with the expectations of how quickly their home is going to sell, how many offers. And I think like we as the industry experts need to keep working on getting those expectations back in line with, the reality of today's market, which is very different from that time.
But it's not just the higher end product. I had a gal, met her, and I said $399 will sell for $420, $430. Yeah. You're wrong.
Yeah.
We need to list at $485. And I said, but our comps that are around us aren't supporting that.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't care. That's what I want to get. Mm-hmm. The day we listed, we went at $519. I didn't know how to have the conversation. I'm at $399 and she's at $519.
Yeah.
So we were on the market for a couple of months, no offers, no showings. It was crickets.
Yeah.
And then we got down to $484, $464, 5 offers in the low 400s, not accepted. The next door neighbor lists their house at $349. Mm-hmm. I call her up, and meanwhile we're not on the market now. I said, hey, this is what's happening with your neighbor. Mm-hmm. And I said, that will dictate what you're going to get on your own home, because she's coming in so low. And she ended up selling and she goes, do you don't think I'll get $450 for mine? And I'm like, even if you list it at $399 now, I don't think I could give you $420 based on the market. Mm-hmm. The house sold for $359.
Wow.
And the neighbor's house sold for $359, so just like $10,000 more or whatever it was. There's no way she'll get $450 for that home. So I understand your need to get where you want to be, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you or I are saying.
Yeah.
It's what the buyer.
100%.
And it's not the properties that are active, what you feel that your house should be. Yeah. It's about the properties that sell.
Yeah.
And I love Viewpoint, just like buyers do. And they're all looking at it. Yeah. And there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
So, what are you saying to a seller who's had 15 showings?
I mean, to me, if you've had 15 showings, it really comes down to the feedback. But like, if the feedback is just like typical things that I'm expecting to hear, then we're probably too high. Unless it's like just a really like, general feedback thing and it's like a difficult home sale because it backs onto a main road, or it,
That's different.
like if there's like a specific thing like that. But let's face it, when we list homes, the 2 or 3 things you're going to hear over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
In terms of feedback. And I convey that to a seller when we list, because I'm like, I want to prep you that like, here's what we're going to hear.
I do the same thing.
And sometimes there are things that can be fixed, and sometimes there are things that can't be fixed. And oftentimes it's can't be. Like it's, corner lot with no backyard, or it's, there's some reason why that home's not selling. So to me, it comes down to, is the feedback all saying we're too high, or is it just saying it's not the right home for them? Because those are 2 very different things. But generally speaking, to me, if you're priced right and you have 15 showings, you're probably going to have a sale on your home if you're priced right.
Absolutely.
And if you're not, then it's probably time to come back down, right? And I think it's one thing to start off a little bit higher and to try it and to see what works. But if you try higher and it's not working, you need to adjust quickly, because as those days on market are starting to creep up, your chances of getting a sale, even at market value, are diminishing quickly.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And, I have one person that I've worked with over the years. Well, I'm okay. Like, just let them, just write an offer.
Yeah.
But some buyers just don't want to write offers if they feel that your price is high, because they don't think they can bring something together.
Yeah.
So it's, expectations this year are way different than what I've ever experienced. And apart from either the feedback that if you're not getting showings,
that's feedback in itself.
that's feedback. If you're having showings and there's no offers, that's the same thing.
Yep.
And again, we understand that you can't change location. And, I talked to someone else today about changing, doing things with your home. But at the end of the day, it's price.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Any home will sell based on the price that it's at. And you see it all the time, like these homes that need a ton of work, maybe it's like, not been lived in for years or whatever it might be. Those are just as hot of a commodity as a fully renovated home.
Yep.
But it's just a specific buyer looking for it. But at the end of the day, like that has to be reflected in the price.
Yes.
And that kind of stuff, like, those listings are great. They usually sell right away if you have the price right, because there's just as many people looking to, do a gut job reno as there is looking for a full, a house that's fully renovated. But what I'm seeing out there now is a lot of listings that the prices are not really making sense to me. But at the same time, I'm seeing some sales that don't make a lot of sense.
Yes, I get that. So when you're seeing prices that don't make sense, what are you saying to your buyer at that point? Would they write? Yeah,
I'm always an advocate of like, look, if you want to, like, let's write an offer. You never know. They might just have something really high, and then there's, they're throwing a number at the wall to see if it sticks, but really they would take, a lot lower number. But it just depends. It depends on how high is it? How bad do the buyers want it? How did my conversation with the listing agent go? Like, did he, or he or she specifically say, like, we're not really that flexible on price? Because then I might not waste my time, right? But to me, there's only one way to really know. And I feel like a lot of sellers feel differently when there's something on paper in front of them, right?
Yes.
On a screen in front of them. As opposed to saying, hey, like, would you take 830? Like, verbally is very different than like, hey, I have 830 on a piece of paper right here, and if you sign it, it's a deal, right? Like, those are 2 very different things. But I'm seeing some listings that don't make sense on the lower end as well.
Yeah, so talk to me about that.
So here's an example. I had a semi-detached property in Eastern Passage, one of the split levels with the bedrooms in the basement. It was a rental for a few years. My guys bought it back in like 2020. And when the tenant moved out, they did some work and they really freshened it up nice. We did all new flooring and painted it, and it showed really well. Everything I'm looking at, like, there's, the comps are the comps. And like, the comps aren't comps. They're the exact same house, just like 4 houses down. Like, they're all the same, more or less. It's just like, which ones are renovated, which aren't. Which ones have new roofs, which ones don't. Do they have heat pumps or not? Do they have a new deck or not? But they're all the same layout, give or take. Everything I was looking at comps-wise told me 430 to 440 was probably what we were going to end up with. And every home that was sold in there over the last like 3 months, they listed at $399, and that's how they got there. So that's what we did. We were just like, well, carbon copy, let's go $399. We ended up getting 461, which like really blew my mind. And again, it's worth what a willing buyer is willing to pay for it. But at the end of the day, there's nothing within the comparables that tell me that should have sold that high. But we just kind of hit it at the right weekend at the right time. And they did a good job freshening it up. We had good marketing and all that. But
so was it the agent not giving the best advice to their buyer to go that high? I mean, good for your seller.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at from a buyer, because you know how I got on that high rigger?
Yep.
You know what it was like? I ranted about that for like a good 2 years.
Yep.
And, did the buyer get the best advice?
Well, I'll say this. They weren't the only offer within that realm. Like, it's not like they were 25 grand clear of everybody. Quite frankly, if they weren't that high, they weren't going to get it. So it's interesting because they weren't the only buyer willing to pay that. And maybe it was just like the new floor, the new paint, it had a new roof. Like maybe it just hit just right at the right time. But I guess where I'm going with all this is, if I listed that at 449.9,
crickets.
I probably wouldn't even had any showings. But I think some of those buyers on those lower price point properties, which sounds even weird to say because like it wasn't that long ago where that was normal.
I know.
But like a lot of them are probably only looking up to 400 if their budget's like 420, 430, 440, because a lot of those are still being listed a little bit on the low side and going over. But like to me, I'm just seeing a lot of ones where I'm kind of like, why is that listed so low? Because there's so many comparables to tell you what it's worth.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to be strategic about it and be like 20 grand too low because it's like, we expect it, it's going to be a hot property. We expect it to sell 720 to 730. Let's go at 699. Let's really put the pressure on the buyer to come up with that, right? But I don't know. I'm seeing a lot that are listed like really low, like 649 that should sell at 730 or 740 or 750, and I just don't get it, quite frankly, because it's a waste of time for everybody.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a property out in Bedford, dated.
Yep.
Good bones.
Yep.
And based on the other properties that were upgraded, they were selling 640. I said, so yeah, we need about $100,000 worth of work in here, maybe two. 499, great price.
Yep.
I'm getting offers for 430, and I'm thinking, it doesn't make sense to me because the other ones that are renovated, like I didn't understand that at all. Yet at 419, at 419 I ended up getting 460. Yeah. So I don't understand the advice that maybe some agents are giving to their clients.
I think a lot aren't giving any at all. They're letting the buyer run the show, right? Their buyers reaching out to them saying, hey, I want to see this house. And they don't even look at it. They just book it on the showing app and they go. And then the buyer says, I want to write it. And then they write the offer. Like they're not, in a lot of cases, I think that a lot of the buyer's agents are very passive. They're not actively doing a very good job for their clients. They're not actively out there being like, hey, like to me right now, the biggest opportunity on the buyer side are those homes that have been sitting for 30 days.
Yes.
That there's absolutely
longer.
nothing wrong with them. They're just a little high on the price and people are passing over it because they think there might be something wrong.
I know, and there's nothing wrong.
But a lot of those buyer agents are not actively seeking those out and being like, hey, we looked at this one the other day, but here's one that could be a really good opportunity for you to get into one at like right at market value or a little bit less, no competing, no stress on that front, I know,
it just makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you educate the buyer agent?
I think it comes from the broker level as a general statement. It comes from the brokerage, but I think like they just revamped the course, which I think is great because I'm assuming it's a lot more, tailored to today and what those people should be learning, and it's a lot longer and more in depth. So I'm hoping that is kind of the start of that new wave. But I think a lot of it comes from the broker level. We do a ton of training for our agents because you have to. Because they come out of the course and they don't really know anything. So we don't really have much of a choice unless we want to like really have a hard time.
For 4 years, so like I would agree with you. But if you had to give a buyer advice for a property sub 600, what are you saying?
I'm saying that you need to be ready for an emotional roller coaster, depending on exactly what location and stuff they're looking in. Like we're probably going to be in a lot of multiple offer situations. Again, depending on the exact kind of micro markets or neighborhoods they're looking in, you're probably going to lose one before you get it. We need to make sure that you're pre-approved with somebody that like can get it done in like 5 business days, so that we have an up on everybody right away. And truthfully, I think that one of the things that bugs me the most right now in our industry is there's times where I'm receiving offers on listings, like multiple offers, and all those agents know they're competing, the buyers know they're competing. And some of those offers, like they don't have a chance right from the start because of the conditions that they have in their offer. And I doubt that it's the buyer wanting to put those in. I think they're just going with, you know, what their agent's telling them, and they're maybe not getting the best advice, but they don't even know it. Like they think they're just losing because of price every time.
So
but it might
that's
not
interesting.
necessarily be that, is my point.
I had a young guy call me on my property over in Eastern Passage, and so, not my client, but he wants to get a showing. His agent's in Europe, and I said, I'm sorry. I said, I represent the seller.
Yeah.
You know, maybe your guy has someone, you know, at his office to take you out. And he's like, we've lost so many showings, or sorry, so many offers. And I'm like, well, I said, do you have a house to sell? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I said, is it listed? No. And I said, well, I want to give you a scenario.
Yeah.
I said, this property, we're going to go on multiple offers. And why would I select your offer when you have a house to sell that's not even on the market? When I have this offer over here, no house to sell, so I'm going to go with that. I said, are you not having that conversation? I said, you're not losing because of money. You're losing because of conditions.
In fact, you might be the highest and lose.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. The best offer is not necessarily the highest number. In a lot of cases it is, and money talks. Like that's obviously,
I get it.
You know, like the biggest line on that offer is the price.
Yeah.
So if I show a home and I know my buyer's interested like right away, right? It's a great fit for them. It's right in the wheelhouse of their budget and all that. I'm starting the process immediately as a buyer's agent. Like there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And there's different ways to do things, but there is a right and a wrong way. And I think when you're dealing with experienced people, we understand that. So I show the home, my buyer loves it. Maybe they have a couple questions. I'm not texting you. I'm giving you a call.
Oh, I know.
And I'm saying, hey, Sandra, how you doing? I got the perfect buyer for that listing. And I'm starting to inception your mind that my buyer is the best one. I just want to let you know. We reviewed all the documents. We, did this, we did that. My buyer's pre-approved. Here's what they do for work. Here's a little picture of them. They're the cutest couple ever with a little kid. All
That's
these
quite the
things,
courtship.
right? You need to work for your clients, and it's all about instilling confidence in the sellers. The seller wants to have confidence that when they sign that deal and you have 7 or 10 days due diligence, that it's going to be a done deal at the end of it with minimal headache. You're not going to come back asking for 20 G's off the price because of something stupid that was readily available to the naked eye during a showing, right?
Yeah.
Things like that matter. The way that an agent writes an offer matters. The way that they go about the process to get to that part when they submit the offer matters.
Absolutely.
And the way to not do it is to just send an offer in
And
out of nowhere with no context. You have no idea who the clients are. You have no idea what they're, if they're pre-approved. You have no idea if their agent even showed them the house half the time.
Oh,
crazy.
I have realtor rules.
Yes, and I love them.
And I did it was because of that. Like, I want to know if your buyer is pre-approved. Like, you are taking my seller's home off the market for, let's say, 10 days, and you're not organized. So I get that we're all excited to be with a client when we're new or we're not doing, we're just excited. But at the end of the day, it's not just about your client. It's about my seller.
Yeah.
And I want to know, for me, it's not just about the client. It's about the competency of the agent that I'm dealing with. And competency is why I put the rules in. Like, hey, I want your pre-approval. Yeah. I have a home inspection. Make sure you're ready because you're not coming back to poke the bear.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just find agents aren't as committed.
Yes.
I guess as they were, or buyer agents aren't as committed as they were to their, years ago. It's just changed so much. And this is a big decision that someone is doing, is buying a house, and they don't want to be writing 20 offers.
Yeah. And to be a good buyer's agent takes a lot of work and a lot of energy. To be a good one, it takes very little energy to be a buyer's agent in general. If you're just fielding, showing requests and going out to show the home, it takes time, but very little energy. But if you're doing it right, it takes a lot of energy. And I think that a lot of people are not putting in the amount that's required and actively working for their client in the right way. But like, it's so detrimental to a seller if a deal falls.
Oh.
Like, the chance of getting that number again are so slim depending on the situation. Like, how many times have you had a deal that fell and then it was like, we had 550 on the table and then we had other offers at like 545, 540, 535. Then it goes back to market and then it's like the best you're going to do is 515. Like, there has to be an understanding and a level of respect and a level of operating in good faith in that buyer agent role and in that buyer side of the deal, because it's so detrimental on the other end. If it falls apart, it's devastating to those
It's stressful,
clients.
of course.
Yeah.
So that's why I started pre-inspecting homes. So, today I'm going through, an offer and I get back a counter. They want money off the roof. And I'm like, hey, you signed off. Your buyer signed off that they read the home inspection report and it said that the roof needed to be replaced. Like,
so my assumption as a listing agent is that you took that into account when you put 550 on the table.
Exactly.
Right? That's the reality.
Because on my counter it says buyer has acknowledged that they read the home inspection report.
Yeah.
Granted, go ahead and do your own, but unless my guy misses something, we're done.
100%.
And so selecting an agent, whether it be a buyer agent or a listing agent, it's not about being cute on social media or doing videos of dancing through a house or whatever someone wants to do. It's not about that. It's about, relationship building. It's about confidence, competency. And I believe now we're back into a regular market that those things are way more important, because you just don't stick a sign up and sell a house, or you just don't, during COVID, that's gone. There's negotiation, there's communication.
Back to the good old days.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and that's the interesting part is like, that's what we were saying earlier with like the expectations, how, the expectations I feel like from the public and from the consumer side of things are still kind of like in that really heated pandemic market, but that's not here anymore. It's not to say the market is slow necessarily. It depends what you're doing and what neighborhood and what price range, but the expectations have to be conveyed from other industry members down to the consumer level is the reality.
I agree. That's a big lesson to learn. So I won't keep you anymore. It's a Friday evening. And just thank you for coming out. I think these conversations are good to have because the consumer does need to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.